Next is going to be Nathan Butler. He's a photographer. His piece for reference is this beautiful abstract piece over here towards the back. And yeah, please welcome Nathan. Give him a round. Yeah, so I guess I will start with how, I mean, you live here in Fort Worth, and how has Fort Worth influenced your work? How has Fort Worth influenced the way that you express yourself? And maybe you can speak a little bit about the city.
Yeah, so I've been in Fort Worth for a year, and in my year here, I've got a lot of warmth, Midwestern warmth, and what I've noticed about the people here is that there's very tight-knit communities that are very hard to find.
Yeah.
Because in the city, there's a lot of families, right? And that can kind of tie into the close-knit communities. But how that's influenced my work? Well, I'm an individual amongst this vast crowd, and I don't feel that. I don't feel the close-knit community or the inclusion that I'm supposed to get being in the big suburban centers.
Sure. Yeah. So you also, you mostly do a lot of portraiture. How did you get into portraiture? Did you go to school? What was a way that sort of inspired you to start doing portrait photography?
Yeah, so I got into portraiture through my best friend in high school. So they brought me a camera and go to me to use it, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll give it a try. And I did do that for a few years throughout high school, and I didn't really value photography. But after I graduated, I started to reach out through Instagram and to different people that were outside of my circle.
Yeah.
What I found through those portraits is that if you look into their eyes after you've taken a photo and you study it, let's say months after you've taken the photo, you get to see something about them that wasn't there when you took the photo. So what I mean by that is you take the photo and you look into their eyes, but you can't draw anything from that. However, looking at it months later, you can draw your own opinions about that said person. So really, what I love about portraiture is I get to study people and I get to look at them, how I saw them.
Yeah, kind of like a retrospective study.
Yeah, a very retrospective study on who that person was at that moment.
Yeah, beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and again, similar to Andrew, I really wanted you to be here and specifically this piece because we went through the same process where, I knew I didn't want him to present a portrait photograph. I think that would have obviously been in combatance to kind of the aesthetic of what I wanted to express in the show. But I wanted him to just kind of bring me his personal work, and he showed me a selection of photos. Some were actually very personal, and there was some self-portraits in there, and similar temperaments that I think that, we connected with.
Yeah.
But I think this one specifically stood out to me because, on the surface of it, it does not look like a photograph. It's a very abstract, obscure, mercurial kind of composition. And that's I love work like that myself. So I was kind of picked at him, I think I want to go with this one, blow it up and give it a breathing room. But maybe, I think the one thing that also kind of struck me the most about the piece was you told me of how you actually created the piece. So you spoke about a specific photographic technique called Modancage.
Yeah.
And I believe you said it was French, correct?
Yeah, so Modancage is this 18th century French technique, and it involves putting acid onto silver gelatin paper. So how I made that was that I followed the recipe of that technique. It's a pretty simple process. It's like a chef baking bread. So
that's not simple. Bro, come on, everybody's trying to figure sour you can't make that reference.
I actually made bread last week for the first time. This is clearly not good, but so what I did was I poured acid onto silver gelatin paper, and as you might suggest, that it's made with gelatin, and as the gelatin rose up from that acid, lifting it up, I got my finger and I just etched out patterns onto it until I was fully satisfied with what I got. And obviously, acid is wet, so you have to wait a little bit for it to dry. And as it dries, these color shifts start to happen from red to brown to black, and that's just through the course of time, let's say about an hour. And as soon as it dried, you get this mix and match of colors that really, it just blends all together. So yes, it's like a recipe.
And the title of the piece is Eco Death. How literal or how implicit is that as far as like what you wanted to express with the work?
Yeah, so it's called Ego Death because when I made this, it was pretty emotionally charged. I won't go into deep detail, but I was going through a breakup, and I wanted to cope with that breakup by creating something because the person I was with was an artist, and I wanted to impress them.
We've all been there, bro.
But it turned into something else, so it was emotionally charged, and I wanted to depict the feeling or the emotionality of despair and ego death, and those two are those two are closely intertwined. So
I would agree. Yeah.
when you're feeling that feeling of deep sorrow, you cannot feel like yourself. It feels like you're a different person, and that's how ego death happens. You aren't yourself anymore. You're just this person feeling these heavy feelings and trying to get through it. But on a lighter note, when I look at this, I get really happy because that's a different Nathan that I've seen. In the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time has passed and you can see it and kind of have an appreciation for the time and how you express it in that moment. No, I think that's great. I think it's beautiful, man. Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you would like to maybe add on specifically your personal practice? Have you been doing this specific photography recently, or has it maybe been something you've sort of set aside and kind of taken on different, avenues?
Yeah, so there's two different iterations of this called death and life. Very philosophical terms if you think really deeply about it. But they follow the same process. They look very different actually because they're made with different time intervals. So
Okay.
this one took 2 hours.
2 hours? Wow.
Yeah, 2 hours, while the other two took less time. And,
Okay.
Time is directly correlated with the color that is being output.
Yeah.
So,
Did you do it in a, what setting? Did you just do it in do you have like a studio, or what was it just kind of just in your home? Or?
I don't have a studio, so
Okay.
to create this I had to use sunlight, so I had to go outside into my backyard. At the time I was living at my parents' house, so I had the best space,
Yeah, right, bro.
Yeah, so it was in my backyard. I used the sun to create this, and while you could use a lamp, there's nothing better than the sun.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Nathan about his photograph and the process of how he created it?
So when you were describing the process, you talked about dragging your finger around the piece, and I know it's not going to be random. What kind of things influenced the way you were designing pieces to be?
So what influenced me was the unpredictability of the gelatin as it was on top of the, extended body of the acid. So it's very hard to control, and I used my finger to control that. And think about a piece of paper on top of water, and it gets very wet, and it's very pliable. So it can be manipulated into any sort of shape possible. And I used my finger because that's all I had available.
Does anybody else have any questions for Nathan?
How many iterations of that did you do, or is it just one and done?
So I said iterations, about 4 or 5. So there's test runs that go because it's very unpredictable the outcome. So you get any kind of shape possible. But the other 2 iterations, I used the same process but with different time.
Kind of on that note, one of the things, I love that piece because it, to me, is very cosmic. And I love that you use the sun as your source to create that because I feel that the sun's energy in that piece. But aside from that, there is a mark on the top right corner of that, kind of like a hairline. And I know that sometimes, it sounds like it was a very wet process, or dust and dog hair. I don't know, like grass, what can become a part of your art. And I know some artists leave those quote unquote imperfections or chance things into their art. Like was that something that you left intentionally there or not? I'm just curious. Like,
yeah. So that's a good observation. Yeah, there are like bits and pieces of grass and dirt on top of it. While it wasn't intentional to leave it there, I felt as if it wouldn't really show up as I thought it would. But you've seen it.
Yeah.
I've
seen it.
Is it also not like, you know, when you're scanning it, is the dust and the dirt from the scan? Could that potentially have been what it was? You know, because when you're scanning photos, you want to take, you know, get the dust off of, you know.
Yeah, it could definitely affect it. I make sure to clean the scanner as I take it.
Yeah.
So the original size of this piece is actually 8 by 10. It's been enlarged because I think that size does not do it justice. It's definitely meant to be viewed like this size.
Yeah.
But I didn't have really too much control. I have to be honest. I just really followed the formula and tried my best to create a shape out of it.
Beautiful.
I think it's cool.
Any other questions for Nathan? Austin?
Do you enjoy the process? I know that a bunch of artists sometimes don't actually enjoy the process of making art.
Okay, I don't enjoy the process. Yes, because there was a bunch of failures that happened. Sometimes you get the paper and the gelatin would just fly right off, and then sometimes there will just be complete darkness, and that's not really great to see. A lot of failures, but it really makes up when you actually see something out of what you've created. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Anybody else?
One question. I don't know if you kind of just answered it, but you said there was 4 or 5 iterations that you did, and I know that this, like abstract art, it's so subjective. So like, what to you was like, this is the one compared to the 4 or 5 that you already did?
Yeah, so that goes back to emotionality. What I came across is the study of human emotionality. We have a vast amount of emotions that we feel every day, and that can be either a frown on your face or, you know, rage would be like the aftermath of breaking a vase. So what I saw here was my despair that I felt at the time, and that really influenced what I saw there. And what I see is a face of myself.
Wow.
But there are other iterations under different names, and they all represent a feeling that we all feel.
So cool.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you.